They're pouring concrete into it right now. I dropped the toolbox and ran outside. The sound hit me first. Heavy machines, engines, and that wet grinding noise of cement being dumped. When I reached the back fence, I froze. They weren't joking. My creek, the same small creek that had been running behind my property for years, was being buried alive under fresh concrete. A long gray line stretched through it like a scar. Workers were pouring mix straight into the water, blocking the natural flow. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted, climbing over the low fence. One of the workers looked at me, then back at the man in a clean jacket standing near a black SUV, Karen. She turned slowly, like she had been waiting for me. "Oh, good," she said with a smile. "You're finally here?" I walked straight toward the edge of the creek, water already slowing under the thick layer of cement. "You can't do this," I said. "That's a natural waterway," Karen folded her arms. "It's an eyesore," she replied calmly, "and it floods the community." "It doesn't flood anything," I snapped. "It drains the water away." She gave a fake little laugh. "Well, not anymore." The workers kept going. Another load of concrete slid into the creek, pushing water up toward my side. My boots were already sinking into wet mud. "You didn't get permission for this," I said. Karen tilted her head. "We don't need your permission." "I'm not talking about me," I said, pointing down at the creek. "I'm talking about the county." That made one of the workers pause for a second, but Karen didn't even blink. "We handled it," she said. "All approved." Something about the way she said that felt off. Too fast. Too confident. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Karen noticed, but didn't stop me. In fact, she stepped closer. "Go ahead," she said quietly. "Record it. Maybe you'll finally understand that this neighborhood doesn't revolve around your little creek." Behind her, the concrete kept spreading, sealing the water in, and then something happened. The water didn't stop. It started backing up. At first it was slow, just a small rise along the edge. Then it pushed harder. Climbing up the sides, spilling into the grass, one of the workers turned. Ma'am?" Karen waved him off. "Keep going." But the water kept rising. I stepped back as it started creeping toward my yard. "You blocked the exit?" I said quietly. "Where do you think the water's gonna go?" Karen's smile faded. "Just a little. It'll settle," she said. But it didn't. The creek was never just a ditch. It was a flow line, connected to something bigger. And right now they had just sealed it shut. Water suddenly pushed up from under the fresh concrete, bubbling through cracks. One worker jumped back. "Hey, it's coming through." Karen snapped. "Just pour more." "Seal it." Another truck backed up, dumping even more concrete, but that only made it worse. The water had nowhere to go now, so it started finding new paths. Toward the lowest ground, toward the houses, toward the HOA side. I looked up slowly at Karen. "You didn't check the original land plan, did you?" She didn't answer. That told me everything. Because 20 years ago, before this whole suburb existed, this creek wasn't just natural, it was protected and redirected very carefully. Karen took a step closer to me. "You're overreacting," she said, but her voice wasn't as steady now. I shook my head. "No," I said quietly. "You just made a mistake you can't undo." Behind her, water suddenly rushed out from the side of the blocked creek, spilling across the HOA walking path. People started shouting near the clubhouse in the distance. Karen turned to look, and for the first time, she looked worried. I put my phone down slowly. Because I knew something she didn't. Blocking that creek didn't stop the water. It triggered something else. Something the county had built into this land years ago, just in case someone tried exactly this. And now it was waking up. Water didn't just spread, it surged. Within minutes, the walking path behind the HOA clubhouse turned into a stream. The grass soaked through, then disappeared under a thin layer of moving water. People started shouting. Someone dropped a chair near the clubhouse entrance as water rushed past their feet. Karen spun around. "Stop the trucks! Stop!" But it was too late. The creek was already sealed. One of the workers ran up, panic in his voice. "Ma'am, it's backing up fast. We need to open something." "There is nothing to open," Karen snapped. I shook my head slowly. "There was," I said. "You just buried it." She turned toward me, eyes sharp. What are you talking about? I'd pointed down at the concrete line cutting through the creek. You blocked a regulated flow path. That water doesn't disappear. It reroutes. Another shout came from uphill. Water's hitting the parking lot. We both looked. A thin sheet of water was now sliding across the HOA parking lot, reflecting the gray sky. It didn't look like much yet, but it was moving fast. Karen grabbed her phone. I'm calling the county. Good, I said calmly. You should have done that before. She shot me a look. This is your fault. You're the one who kept this ditch, I almost laughed. That ditch is on record, I said, protected. She waved it off. We have approval. From who? She didn't answer. That silence said everything. One of the older residents came rushing up, shoes soaked. My garage is taking water, he shouted. Karen looked around, trying to stay in control. It's just temporary. Once the concrete sets, it's not about the concrete, I cut in. It's about pressure. She frowned. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You sealed a moving system, now it's pushing back. Right then, a loud crack echoed from the creek. Everyone turned. A section of the fresh concrete shifted, just slightly. Then a thin jet of water blasted through it, then another, and another. Within seconds, multiple cracks formed, shooting water out like small fountains. Workers backed away. Ma'am, it's breaking through. Karen's face went pale. No, that's not possible. But it was happening. The pressure underneath was building too fast. Water shot out from the sides, cutting new paths through the soil, heading uphill. Straight toward the HOA side, I stepped back and crossed my arms. You didn't just block water, I said quietly. You forced it to find a new way. Karen turned on me, voice shaking now. Then fix it, I stared at her. You didn't listen before. Another loud crack split the air. This time, a whole section of concrete caved in, and a surge of muddy water burst through, stronger than before. People near the clubhouse started running. Water rushed across the lawn, hitting the foundation area. And then, sirens. 2 county trucks pulled up fast near the entrance. Karen froze. A man stepped out, wearing a rain jacket, holding a clipboard. His face was serious the second he saw the creek. He walked straight toward us. Who authorized this? He asked sharply. Karen stepped forward, trying to regain control. I did. I'm the HOA president. We had flooding issues and he cut her off. You poured concrete into a natural waterway? It's not natural, she said quickly. It's just drainage. He looked at me. Is that true? I met his eyes. No, I said. It's listed on the county map. Protected flow line. The inspector didn't even hesitate. He flipped open his folder. I thought so. Karen blinked. Wait, what? He pointed at the creek. This waterway connects to a designated wetland system. Everything went quiet for a second. Karen shook her head. No, that's not possible. This is private community land. The inspector looked around at the flooding, then back at her. Not anymore, he said. Her face drained of color. What do you mean? He closed the folder slowly. I mean, you just altered a protected water system. Water continued rushing past us, spreading wider across the HOA side. The inspector took a step closer. And that changes everything. Have you ever dealt with a homeowners association that just went way too far? Well, get ready for a story about an HOA president. Let's call her Karen, whose obsession with control led to the most spectacular, self-inflicted failure I've ever heard of. So picture this. A guy, we'll call him Mark, buys a beautiful property. It's got a big backyard, and part of it borders a small, marshy area. Mark loves nature and plans to turn his yard into a beautiful garden, maybe even with a small pond. He's excited to be part of this new community. But before he can even unpack his boxes, he gets a visit from Karen, the HOA president. She's got a clipboard, a measuring tape, and an attitude that could curdle milk. Karen immediately starts laying down the law. She tells Mark that the HOA has very strict rules about landscaping. No unapproved plants, no structures without permission, and definitely no changes to the natural state of his property. She's particularly interested in the marshy part of his yard. She declares it community property, even though Mark's property line clearly shows it's his. Mark tries to be reasonable. He shows her the survey, explaining that it's his land, but he's happy to keep it looking nice. Karen isn't having it. She insists that he's not to touch that area, or there will be fines. Over the next few months, it becomes a full-blown war. Mark starts planting his garden on the non-marshy part of his yard, and every single day there's a new violation notice from Karen. The flowers are too tall, the mulch is the wrong shade of brown, the bird feeder is attracting unauthorized wildlife. It was ridiculous. Mark follows the rules, changes what he needs to, but the notices keep coming. The whole time, Karen keeps warning him to stay away from the marshy area. Mark starts to get suspicious. Why is she so obsessed with this soggy patch of land? He decides to do some research. He calls the county, talks to the Environmental Protection Department, and learns something fascinating. That little marshy area isn't just a swampy part of his yard, it's a protected wetland. And not just his part, but a larger wetland system that extends behind several properties, including the community clubhouse. Because of its protected status, there are huge restrictions on any kind of development near it. Messing with it could trigger massive fines and mandatory restoration orders from the state. Suddenly, Karen's obsession made a twisted sort of sense. She wasn't trying to preserve nature. She was trying to control Mark and keep him from discovering the wetland's protected status. Why? Well, Mark does a little more digging and uncovers the HOA's long-term plans. They wanted to expand the community clubhouse, build a new swimming pool, and add a tennis court all right on the edge of the wetland. Karen knew that if the state realized their plans would interfere with a protected ecosystem, the project would be dead in the water. So her plan was to bully Mark into leaving the area untouched, hoping nobody would ever look into it officially. This is where the story gets really good. Mark realizes he has all the power. He sends a certified letter to the HOA board, formally notifying them of the protected wetland status of his property and the adjacent areas, and includes all the official documentation from the state. He politely states that any attempt to harass him further or to develop near the wetland will be reported to the environmental authorities. The HOA board panics. Karen, however, doubles down. She's furious. In a move of pure arrogance, she decides to take matters into her own hands. She believes if she can just clean up the area and make it look less like a swamp, she can argue it's not a real wetland. So she hires a crew with a backhoe and, under the cover of a weekend, tells them to start digging and clearing the land right behind the clubhouse, right on the edge of the wetland. Her goal was to drain the area and remove the native plants. It was an absolute disaster. The moment the backhoe broke ground, it ruptured an underground spring that fed the entire wetland. Water starts flooding out, not just into the wetland, but back towards the clubhouse. The ground becomes a muddy, unstable mess. The digging destabilizes the soil, and a huge section of the land behind the clubhouse collapses in a landslide of mud and water, taking a corner of the building's foundation with it. The backhoe itself gets stuck in the muck. Within hours, state environmental agents are on the scene, swarming the place with stop-work orders. Not only did Karen fail to hide the wetland, she actively destroyed a portion of it, which is a massive environmental crime. The HOA was hit with crippling fines easily in the six figures. They were also ordered to fund a multi-year, incredibly expensive restoration project for the entire wetland system. The clubhouse was declared structurally unsafe and had to be closed indefinitely. The expansion project was obviously canceled forever. The community was in an uproar. Their HOA fees skyrocketed to pay for the fines and restoration, and their main amenity, the clubhouse, was now a sinking ruin. Karen was immediately removed as president and faced potential legal action herself. And Mark? He finally got to enjoy his beautiful garden in peace, watching from his yard as the consequences of Karen's own making literally swallowed her grand plans whole. It's a perfect example of how trying to control everything can lead to losing it all. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.